They're a pop opera. Where do I start? Probably one of the best musicals to have ever been created in the past 2.5 decades. It's both the combination of the fact that the instrumentals are these swelling rock ballads and the fact that it tells a story that feels so honest and raw and unsanitized or censored that makes it so incredible. The story follows two high school boys in their graduating year, Peter and Jason, who are in a relationship and have been since the beginning of high school. They try to navigate being at a Catholic boarding school and dealing with their sexuality. They're a Pop Opera has had a very interesting journey. It has gone through so many different iterations and versions of itself. The most distinct versions that I can think of are the original demo, the 1999 demo, the year 2000 workshop, the 2002 finalized musical, the 2004 script that me and my girlfriend found, which has some songs that we have never heard of before or heard on it. And then finally the 2013 redo of the production, Bear the Musical, which I don't consider to be part of the Bear Pop Opera canon, simply because I think Bear the Musical is a slander on the name of the original. It's bad. Now, the original demo, the first demo, which was presumably only shown to prospective production companies, actually hasn't really been heard by many people because it received such negative reviews.
We put this thing together and nobody liked it when they heard it, really.
However, my girlfriend and myself uncovered a copy on SoundCloud of the 1999 demos, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. The 1999 demos spawned a set of around 50 sold-out shows in LA from 2000 to 2001, which were so sold out that people even bought tickets specifically just to sit on the floor to get to watch this musical. So, without further ado, let's get into the actual tracks of the demo and how this story differs so much from the finalized version of the musical. The song Epiphany opens the demo tracks, and you are immediately struck by how nightmarish the melodies are and how jarring it is to listen to this track and hear the melody and tone of the song drastically shift from one part to another. There are echoey vocals that are heard throughout the songs being whispered, and the chorus is a very alarming and loud chanting of the phrase homosexual in pew 3.
Homosexual in pew 3. Homosexual in pew 3.
Peter's character is already starkly different from Peter's character in the finalized version of the musical, and you can really hear this in this song. He is actively terrified of being perceived as gay, instead of passively being scared about what people might think about him if they found out. There is also a parallel in this song drawn between Peter and Mary Magdalene. Now, Mary Magdalene has been culturally seen as an icon of repentance from sexual deviation because of her depiction as a repentant prostitute. This kind of implies the idea that Peter is actively trying to change who he is, a trait that is actually more associated with Jason in the finalized version of the musical. Something else that lends to this overall concept of a much stronger sense of terror than the final version of the song Epiphany is the fact that at the beginning, instead of Father Flynn just reading some strange versions of the Bible, he starts screaming at Peter.
You think you could go to a fine Catholic boarding school like St. Cecilia's for 4 long years and not have me notice? Oh, come on. God is everywhere and knows all, Peter.
Now, the readings in this song also reveal a little bit more about possibly what Peter's motivation could be for wanting to come out in the conceptual version, because he is so scared. In the readings, it is said Peter is a known homosexual who's been hiding this secret from his family and friends for years, implying that maybe instead of a desire to live his life freely, it is in fact a guilt about keeping this secret that is holding Peter back in this version. Now we come to the most striking part of this version of the song to me. During the funeral scene at the end of the song, where Peter comes upon his own funeral, He's stumbling around. He's asking his mom and Ivy specifically, what's going on? What's going on? And an echoing voice that I can only assume to be Father Flynn whispers and warps around you as you hear him saying, "Don't open that. Bury the keys." Now, I've thought a lot about this, and I think this line could be referring to a metaphor that is talked about in one of Matt's songs later, where opening the door is seen as a metaphorical equivalent to committing a sin. And Peter opening the door here would be him continuing to love Jason, and opening the door also could mean the same thing as opening the casket, giving "don't open that" two separate meanings. Don't open the door and don't continue sinning, and don't open the casket, because if you open the door and you continue this way, when you open the casket, you will see your own body. And this is Peter's worst fear, that his sin will lead him to doom. Right after this, the line is heard screamed by possibly Peter, "Selfish betrayal, take these from me," implying that he, in this moment, wants to give up what he feels for Jason. He wants it taken away from him, and he sees it as a selfish betrayal of his faith. Role of a Lifetime is a song that supposedly came before anything else in Bear. This song was the beginning of the concept of Bear, before the characters and before the plot was established. And this is pretty clear in the fact that the demo track of this song has a very similar tone and a lot of the same lyrics as the finalized version, even all the way to 2012. However, a stark difference in this version is that this specific version of Role of a Lifetime is from Jason's perspective. It is not Peter singing about how Jason feels, it is Jason directly singing about how he feels. This means that Jason's character in the conceptual version of this musical is a lot more self-aware of a person. He knows how he feels and he knows what he wants. This song is just him grappling with that internally, instead of being the Jason we know, who is in denial about everything and thinks that he can keep living in his little bubble with Peter without it affecting his real life. Instead of naive and angry and in denial, Jason seems self-aware and just sad about his circumstances. At the same time that he believes that God is laughing at him in his attempt to follow the words that he's been taught, while he still feels this love for Peter, he believes that this is a burden put on him to make him prove himself. It also speaks to the fact that in this version, he has spent the past 4 years of his life slowly coming to terms with the fact of who he is.
And with each passing year, the awful understanding grew.
Jason does repeat the line that Peter says in the final version, that he knows the scene must change and that he thinks he does want a wife and children, but in this version, it is implied that the reason he believes this is because he just doesn't think it is realistic for him and Peter to move forward. He doesn't think that this is something that could happen for him. Another really key plot change is actually revealed in this song. Jason says the line, "Now this nonsense with the dance," implying that Peter wants to take Jason to their end-of-year school dance together. However, Jason doesn't believe that it's realistic that they could be in a public relationship like that, especially in a Catholic school. It also seems a little inconsistent for Peter's character to want to take Jason to the dance publicly, especially considering his nightmare sequence and some of his other songs that we are going to look at later that describe that he is not the same Peter who is ready and willing to be out as we know in the final version of Bear. Also, this context really changes the meaning of the phrase, "what happens when the music stops," meaning that instead of making some metaphorical sense, Jason is literally asking Peter, if we go to the dance together, what happens when that dance is over? How can we move on from that and continue to live our lives after that? Everything would change. Now, I completely understand why this next song never made it past the demo version, just because its ridiculous and goofy tone completely takes it out of place with the rest of the songs in the musical. It makes light of what is actually like a super serious topic, and it just doesn't seem to fit in perfectly with the other songs. Also, it points out Peter's character inconsistency, because this is a whole song where Peter is basically begging to be made straight. However, earlier, it is revealed that Peter wants to take Jason to the dance. So which is it? How does he actually feel? In this song, Peter is literally just praying and begging God to make him straight in a really goofy, overly comedic sense. Peter is saying he literally does not care who this girl is, what she looks like, how intelligent she is. He just wants any girl that he is able to love to be given to him. To point to the hilarity of this song, Peter literally just starts listing female celebrities that he could possibly find attractive, and then gets distracted and starts listing male celebrities.
Okay, let's try this, God. 1, 2, 3. Nikki Taylor, Claire Danes, Gwyneth Paltrow, Jenny Garth, Brendan Fraser, Noah Wiley, Chris O'Donnell, Marky Mark. God, please.
In a more serious note, although it is definitely played as a joke, Peter starts listing all of the different bad things he will stop doing in order for God to make him straight, implying that he believes that his identity is a curse placed upon him for all of the bad things that he's done. He says he'll stop prank calling, shoplifting, skinny dipping, harming, hating, copying Kevin's homework, lying, and swearing in order to be given a girl he can love. At the very end of the song, the tone takes a very, very, very drastic turn just for the last line, possibly to highlight how serious the subject matter of the song actually is beneath the goofy tone. Peter gets solemn all of a sudden and says, "The love I have for Jason, I need your help, God," alluding to the fact that this song is overly hilarious and ridiculous, but what is actually happening in this song is serious. Now, the demo version of Best Kept Secret is super interesting to me, because this song is not a song where Peter and Jason are arguing like it is in the final version of the musical. No, in this version of the song, Peter and Jason are actually on the exact same page. They are in agreement about their circumstances, which is really strange to hear when the final version of the song is literally an argument about how drastically differently they see things. I'm going to assume, for the purposes of this, that this is also set during the rave, like it is in the final version of the musical. Peter and Jason both have a mutual understanding that going public with their relationship would be potentially dangerous for them, and would be something they would have to be very careful about. This is very different from Peter's attitude in the final musical, where he seems to think that just because they love each other, everything will end up okay in the end. He doesn't believe that. Peter specifically says, "The world can be safe for us if we can get dangerous," saying that if we are willing to do something that is risky for us, in the end, the reward will be much greater. And he says, "I swear we have to beware," telling Jason that they have to be careful about how they do it, but they can still get there in the end. Also, the tone of the song for the first half of it seems genuinely hopeful. Peter tells Jason his fear is fading, and Jason says that he can really see them winning and coming out on top at the end of all of this. Something that doesn't totally make sense is at about the halfway point of the song, things seem to turn. Jason's doubts seem to get the better of him, and he tells Peter, "I'm not in this to be out," even though up until now he's been completely agreeing with everything Peter says. Jason explains his reasoning a bit more on this when he says, "When you cross that bridge, there ain't no crossing back," implying that he agrees that it is a step they're going to have to take, but he's not quite ready for it because he doesn't know what the consequences are going to look like at this point in his life. Peter does still call Jason a coward in this version, but when Peter calls Jason a coward, Jason just says, "Aren't we both?" To which Peter doesn't respond, implying that they do both agree, they're on the same page here, they aren't arguing and yelling at each other. They're just lamenting both of their shared conflicts about what are they going to do for the future of their relationship. Again, this song does highlight some character inconsistencies, especially with Peter, because prior to this song, Peter seemed to be dealing with a very, very extreme amount of internalized homophobia, whereas at the point of this song, Peter suddenly starts talking about how he feels like it's time to come out, it's time to be open about their relationship. This could just be the atmosphere of the rave getting to them, making Peter feel so much more optimistic. But I don't know, since Peter has had this inconsistency in prior tracks. Now, in the final version of Bear Pop Opera, I am not a fan of the character Matt. And yes, it is because he hurt my faves, but I don't think he's genuinely a malicious person, but I'm just not a big fan of him. However, in this version, things are a lot different for his character. It seems like his character is much more important and much more expanded upon. Matt has 2 songs back-to-back in the demo album. The first song we're going to be talking about is I've Been Your Faithful Servant, which is a song where Matt is sitting alone praying. He seems to be characterized as someone who is very, very, very dedicated to his faith and to God. He talks in a lot of metaphors relating to the Bible and in very grandiose language. He seems like a bit of a pretentious guy, but he has genuine struggles about his faith. This takes place after he sees Peter and Jason kiss at the rave, and he seems to be really close with both Peter and Jason, which is where the dilemma in this song comes from. Matt says, I'm a poster boy of Christian charity, kneeling now requesting clarity. He is struggling with the fact that he just saw something which his faith tells him is wrong, but that's his friends, and he doesn't know if it's really as bad as he's been told. He says, your deal with Jason, are you tossing kingdom keys to heathen hands? And I don't think this is a dig at Jason. I think he is genuinely asking, are you letting people who do things that I've been told are sinful into heaven? Is Jason okay? I think he's genuinely struggling with the fact that he's confronted with the reality there are people he's been taught are bad, but they're just normal people like him. Throughout this whole song, he is just genuinely questioning over and over again, is Jason a bad guy? Is he not? What do I do with this? He seems genuinely confused and genuinely stressed, and I feel like this song offers such a big insight into Matt's character that we were missing in the finalized version of the musical. He's not a malicious guy. He's just very dedicated to his faith and has been confronted for the first time with the reality that the people he's been taught are wrong could not be wrong. Matt also says a line at the end of I've Been Your Faithful Servant that I haven't been actually able to decipher one of the words in, so I'm going to play that line and tell me if anyone knows what he is saying.
Hold his heel aloft for all to see. Give me one more reason to believe.
Cut from the Same Cloth is another Matt song, which is so weird because we have 2 songs that are only Matt back to back when we don't hear from him all that much in the finalized version of the musical. Since Matt directly addresses Peter in the song, I think it is the case that this song takes place after the rave. It is replacing the song Are You There? Although Peter doesn't sing in this song, since Matt addresses him, that's what I think to be the case. This is the song where that complicated door metaphor I was speaking about in the song Epiphany comes from. Matt says this line, I look back through that window and I remember how it was to have my hand upon that door to gently turn its knob. I peeked my head inside that world and heard my mother sob.
They say God closes doors but opens windows when he does. I look back through that window and remember how it was to have my hand upon that door to gently turn its knob. I peeked my head inside that world, I heard my mother sob.
I think this is Matt talking about an instance in where he has done something that was considered sinful. He did something that he genuinely felt was not according to what he had been taught. And I think he's telling Peter here, hey, I've experienced that guilt. I've experienced that feeling, which happens when you do something you think is wrong. I know how it feels. And I think that this song is Matt talking to Peter about what he's discovered. Coming to terms with the fact that he actually doesn't think that what Jason and Peter are doing is that wrong, even though he's been taught it's wrong. Even though he's been taught it's wrong. And he speaks to the fact that he was so fiercely against homosexuality prior to this moment where he's coming to terms that two of his closest friends are in a relationship. He says what I think is one of Matt's most impactful lines. He says, I can still feel young Isaac's fear, as though I held the knife to slash that heart that beat for boys, which I said was a crime. He has hurt people before by spreading this feeling that he had that being gay was wrong. But he feels bad for that. Genuinely, he feels bad. And he realizes now that Peter and Jason are no different from him. They are just same. They're just people, and he has no right to judge anyone. Matt says, so I ask your Lord perchance if there are two paths through these woods. The light that marks the way is grave for boys with masks and hoods. And in this line, I think he is talking about how it's very difficult for people who are homosexual to live in the faith, and how it's not really fair that it's so much more difficult for them than it is for him. And he understands that. He understands that struggle. He says at the very end of the song something that I think is a beautiful line. He says, we're cut from the same cloth, so who am I to wear this robe? Talking about how he has no right, really, to act like he is holier than thou to Peter, because they both come from the same place at the end of the day, and Matt's done things that he regrets, and Peter has done things that he's been told are wrong, and at the end of the day, it's not really that big of a difference. No, I completely skipped talking about A Quiet Night at Home, and I almost considered skipping talking about this song too, just because this song is so weird, I hardly know what to do with it. I have kind of two theories for what this song is. It is either a replacement for 911 Emergency, or it's a replacement for Birthday Bitch. I think at the end of the day, it is a song about Ivy, and it's kind of setting up her character and who she is in this conceptual version. It's definitely a lot harsher, I think, than Birthday Bitch is. Some of these lyrics are genuinely insane, and this song has an overall tone of just like eerie insanity that makes absolutely no sense. It randomly intercuts with robotic, alien-like voices in the background condemning Ivy, which is very strange. And this is the first song that really references Ivy. So it doesn't reference her by name, so I can't be 100% sure that it's about her. Although, the things that people are saying about whichever girl they're talking about really make me think it's about Ivy. But it's insane that besides Peter calling out Ivy's name in the funeral scene in Epiphany, this is the first reference of Ivy. And she's referenced by lyrics like, Little Miss, I need attention.
Daddy's little whore is so easy, easy. Pays off like a slot machine, sleazy, sleazy. Little Miss flirtatious slut, sun goes down, her legs go up, diva.
Just absolutely crazy. But this song is talking about how the hottest girl at school, I presume, is just so scandalous, she's so easy to get, and she sleeps with pretty much everyone. this is why I think it's about Ivy, and I think this song is the precursor to Jason and Ivy getting together, possibly, because in the demo tracks, there is actually no direct reference to any sort of relationship between Jason and Ivy. But as we'll see later in the fact that the song All Grown Up is in the demo tracks, it happened at some point. So I can only assume it's some point after this song. But yeah, I really don't have a lot more to say about that song because a lot of the lyrics are just kind of saying the same thing but in different ways. Next song in the demo tracks is Wedding Bells, and I'm gonna keep it super brief in this song because it's honestly essentially the exact same as the finalized version of Wedding Bells, which is fun. It's fun to know that there are other songs that are original tracks from the demo that are made it to the final cut. I just want to call out one specific line change. Instead of "we're gathered here today to witness the union of Peter and Jason," the lyric is "we are gathered here today to witness the union of these two fine gays," which I think is really funny and just peak. The song "See Me," which takes place when Peter calls his mom in an attempt to come out to her, but she really just does not want to hear it. It's a little different in the fact that Claire seems to be a much harsher person in this version of the musical. Randomly throughout Peter begging her to listen to him and to let him speak about what he wants to speak about, she keeps intercutting with random lines and phrases that seem completely divorced from anything Peter was talking about and anything she was talking about, but do seem to have an actual significance to the conversation being had. Some of these lines that she randomly speaks in the background are, "I'm amazed by how people can live such unpredictable lives. Sometimes I think the road less traveled is the wrong road. I think your father would agree with me," which I'm assuming is talking about how she knows that the compassionate thing to do is to accept Peter as he is and let him talk and tell him, "Hey, I love you and I accept you," but she thinks that ultimately that is the wrong thing to do, and if she does that, she will have been wrong for doing it. Other than that, the context of this song is largely the same, aside from Peter saying a few lines that speak to the fact that the demo version of this musical was a lot more explicit and a lot less afraid to outright say what it was trying to say compared to the finalized version. This is seen in that Wedding Bells line change, but it's also seen in See Me, where Peter says things like, "It's on the tip of my tongue, but it's only spoken aloud when praying," which is actually an allusion to the song Just a Girl, where Peter is praying about his homosexuality. And then Peter says this line, which is just comedic gold. Peter says, "Remember as a kid you were always harping on me to eat my vegetables? Well, you see, some guys just prefer fruits." Why would he say that? I don't know. But overall, it just seems like this song is setting up the fact that Claire is so much more like evil in this version of the musical than she ends up being in the final one. And I feel like that is what it's like with a lot of the themes in the demos. I feel like in the final version of the musical, a lot of the more extreme themes were watered down to be more palatable. Now, that's not saying Bear is sanitized in any way, because it's not. That's one of the reasons I love it, is because it's so open and honest, without trying to censor any of the harsh realities of things. But it was a lot more of an extreme story at the beginning. Now we're moving on to Warning, the song Claire sings on her own after See Me. And I usually skip this song when I'm listening to the soundtrack. Sorry. But Claire has a lot of different feelings in this version of Warning compared to in the final version. In the final version, she's very much lamenting about how she feels like Peter's sexuality is the result of her failing as a mother. But in this version, while she believes that to be true too, she also has a darker narrative happening in her mind. But first, let's talk about some of the lines alluding to the first narrative, that she just thinks she's failed him as a mother. When she's listing things that she should have noticed that should have alerted her to this, she lists the lisping, the dolls, which is an insane thing to say. Is she okay? And another thing she says is, I should have made him see his uncles more or let him be more rough. Now, getting into the crazier stuff during the later part of the song. I'm just going to read a couple lines, and then I'm going to explain what I think this means. She says, could this really be my firstborn, to want some boy to touch? Sometimes I think my little boy wants me to know too much. I pray every day for my Peter, my greatest gift, my only son. How can I shelter my miracle from being ostracized, hurt, or diseased? I've not the spirit in me to bury my firstborn.
I pray every day for my Peter, the greatest gift, my only son. How can I shelter my miracle from being ostracized, teased, hurt or diseased? I have not the spirit in me to bury my firstborn.
First of all, wow, that's so much darker than the final version of the song ends up being. I think, really, in this part of the song, Claire has this idea in her head, since Peter has told her this, that because he is gay, he will die of AIDS. I genuinely think that is what she is saying by this, and she genuinely wishes for it to not be true, because she doesn't want to have to see her son die, which puts so much of a darker spin on Claire's mindset. Now we are at Ivy's big song, All Grown Up. Even though Ivy and Jason's relationship has never been mentioned in the demo tracks up until now, I am still assuming, since the rest of the events of the musical play out more or less the same, that she was in a relationship with Jason. That is what this is still a result of. I don't think that changed. Now, there are a lot of key things that are very different in this song that I've discussed at length. First of all, I think that it is the case that Ivy didn't officially find out that she was pregnant until a lot later than she does in the final form of the musical. She says, a sickness every morning. I chose to ignore the warning until I had the strength to ask, implying that she was pretty far along and kind of knew in the back of her head before she actually took a test and found out for certain. Which is so sad to think about, that there is such a big time skip, and now what is she going to do about it? There also seems to be an extremely different vibe to Ivy and Jason's relationship in the demo than there is in the finalized version of the musical. In the final version of the musical, Ivy thinks that Jason is someone who genuinely loves her, and he's not like all of the other boys she's been with. He is someone who sees her for who she actually is inside and loves her as a person, and doesn't just want to use her for her body, or her looks, or the optics of it to the world. However, in the demo, it seems like Jason and Ivy's relationship is very transactional. It was either just a one-night stand or a one-off hookup, or Jason didn't really treat her right. Because Ivy says, I was supposed to be a token, a measure of some small success. Saying that Jason took her as an object, as something to signal his achievement in getting her. Not as actual love, as Ivy believes it is in the final version of the musical. She also says that she was strong enough to measure by, which I think relates back to that line that I just said previously about her being a measure of success. She thinks that to Jason, she is just something to achieve, something to gain. And the tone of the song somehow is even darker than it is in the final musical. Ivy is pretty much screaming throughout this entire song, and the lyrics she's saying are so much more horrifying. I mean, she says, just to know that I was wanted, strong enough to measure by, now forever I am haunted. Mom, I need you, please don't cry. Which is so heartbreaking to hear. Now, this is where the song takes a turn for the worse, if it wasn't already dark enough. Because of the lyrics that follow this point, I genuinely think that the song is saying that Ivy gave herself an at-home DIY abortion, which is something that we maybe can assume doesn't happen in the finalized version of the musical. It's not really said for sure, but it's definitely never directly said that she did do that. And now let's read some lines that explain why I think that. Ivy says, "Trip down the stairs, an old coat hanger. Suppose he says it's my choice too." Which is saying that she thinks that she will be blamed for what happened to her, which is why she is getting rid of this pregnancy. The song also alludes to the religious dilemma that she is having over this decision she's making. She says, "Find the prayer's cryptic word," maybe implying that she is looking through the Bible, looking through prayers to try and figure out if there is something that she can pray, something that she can say, something that she can find that'll tell her that this is okay. The lines that basically confirmed in my mind that what Ivy did was she did induce an abortion. She says, "Little one I never knew. Tiny wonder needs a mother. Thing that I just can't do."
Story ends in total damage. Little one I never knew. Tiny wonder needs a mother. Thing that I just can't do.
Yeah, All Grown Up is so much heavier in the demo, and I can definitely see why it was toned down a lot, because it's just such a hard track to listen to, especially with the fact that she is screaming throughout the whole track. Now, there is only 2 tracks left in this demo. Once Upon a Time, Stupid Second Thoughts, and No Voice. In Once Upon a Time, I feel like in the demo, we don't really get to see a lot of why Jason ends up committing suicide. We don't see him learning about Ivy, what happened to Ivy. We don't know if he actually knows. And we definitely don't see Matt outing him. And I think in the demo, Matt wouldn't have outed him, because he had all of that development in his 2 previous songs that were all about learning to accept the fact that Jason and Peter are gay, and learning to be okay with it. And actually, by the end of Cut from the Same Cloth, saying, "It's okay, you're no different from me, I have no place to judge you." So I don't think Matt would have outed him either. So all I can be left to assume is that just in general, Jason couldn't bear the reality of what being gay meant for his life. I think that just in general, he didn't see himself as having a future with Peter, so he didn't see himself as having a future at all. Most of the lines in Once Upon a Time aren't the same as they are in the final version, but Jason does say at the end of the song, implying that the end of the song ends with him killing himself, "So good night, my love. Yes, you heard it right. You were my love." Implying that only in death is he making peace with the fact that Peter was everything to him. No Voice, much like Stupid Second Thoughts, is largely the same as it is in the final version. Peter tries to begin talking about how he feels about Jason, but when Peter speaks, Father Flynn his voice is overcut over Peter's voice, just speaking over him the whole time. So yeah, that's it. That's the ending of the demo album for Bear Pop Opera. You can definitely see how different of a musical it was, how much darker it was, how unfinished it was in this stage of its life. And I really think that delving into this demo and learning the things it has to say really gives us a deeper insight to who a lot of these characters are and how a lot of the characters we don't get to hear from as much are feeling throughout the musical. I think it makes Matt a much more sympathetic character. It makes Ivy so much more destroyed and tragic, and it makes Jason so much more self-aware and sad instead of angry. Now, I think at some point I'm going to have to go and do a deep dive into the entire lifespan of Bear from beginning to end, all of the different lost media associated with Bear, like recordings of, or what the hell happened to that very, very first demo that we've never got to see. So let me know if you want that.